I think sound is a very odd thing to talk about still. I mean, if you stop someone in the street and ask them what their favourite sound is, they'll have to really think about it. They'll have to take at least 30 seconds. It's just something that we're not yet comfortable with, or we're not yet familiar with. I mean, we've had the recorded image since cave paintings, but we don't have any sounds from back then. We don't know what the globe sounded like. We maybe have a couple of descriptions. We don't know what Roman Britain sounded like. We don't actually really even know what 1978 sounded like. You know, we'll have a couple of recordings, or in the background of a film we might catch a glimpse of a sound, but there's been no real formal way of recording and measuring and thinking about sound. The really exciting thing about sound for me in a theatrical context is that it implicates the audience. If you do it in sound and you don't have anything to look at, people's imaginations will make up the rest. So consequently what you end up is, say there's 500 people in the theatre, you end up with 500 different rooms. Whereas in fact if we'd have just painted the one room, that's the room it would be. We can't really imagine something different to the thing that we're seeing in front of us. So that's what really excites me, is the ability to implicate the audience in a way which is, they're painting the scenery, they're doing the costumes, they're doing hair and makeup. They're doing so much in their imaginations. One of the really exciting things about doing this process is just sort of revealing what an impact memory has on sound. How real are those memories? You know, if you had the capacity to recreate a memory through sound, how realistic would it be? You know, would the other person there recognise that place? If you actually listen to a recording of somewhere where you once were, then it often sounds very different to how you actually imagine it. You didn't maybe notice there was a huge aeroplane above you, or there was a really loud dog barking around the corner, or you remember the aeroplane being really loud but actually it's very quiet or something. You kind of realise quite how fallible we are, and quite how open we are to suggestion, and quite how open we are to filtering things out that we don't think are appropriate, and focusing our attention on one particular thing. The great thing about sound is it goes around corners, so we're really used to experiencing things that are going on without actually ever seeing them. So you could be sat in you could be facing the wall with your eyes closed, but you're or reading a book, but you could hear your partner sleeping next to you. There's times when sort of more banal you get, the more emotional it gets. I guess because it's part of the everyday fabric of your life. So it's a presence in a way, rather than it's a bit of drama, rather than it's like, do you remember the moment do you remember our wedding day? Instead it's like, actually, do you remember that sort of Tuesday morning in March where you got up and you made a cup of tea really slowly? In retrospect, that takes on a huge significance, maybe because, you were particularly in love that point, or you were separating, or that was the moment you realised something. It doesn't always have to be associated with some great drama, but actually sound is good at absorbing that stuff around you and then playing it back to you in a way that can be surprising and trip you up, I think. We're trying to sort of say, this is how sound works or can work. There's some parts where we deliberately lay it out in its component pieces before we put it together finally. So, for example, there's one scene where you hear a bit of water just sort of being slapped in a bucket, and then you add a sort of bit of leather on a chair to create a creak, and then you add a little bit of tapping on a music stand, and before you know it, you're in a boat, and then you have the wind come in, and you're like, suddenly you're in a boat and you've heard the whole thing kind of constructed effectively in front of you. And there comes a point where it stops being a series of just random events, and it starts to coagulate into a real image. And I think that's really interesting to me, that point at where as it comes in and out of focus. And what's great is that everybody has a completely different sort of point at where that is, and a different way of listening to it. For me, it feels like a really exciting step into thinking about what sound can be in the theatre and how we can use it to our advantage.